The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho is a philosophical novel that follows Santiago, a young Andalusian shepherd, on his journey to fulfill his personal legend, a quest to discover a treasure he dreamed of near the Egyptian pyramids. Let's start. A shepherd boy named Santiago retires for the night in an abandoned church with his flock of sheep. An enormous sycamore tree has grown in the place where the sacristy used to be. This is where Santiago falls asleep and dreams a recurring dream. The next morning, Santiago talks to his sheep about the unnamed Andalusian girl he is in love with. Santiago will see this girl in a few days, when he sells his flock's wool to her merchant father. Because his parents wanted him to become a priest, Santiago has studied Latin, Spanish and theology in a seminary, but he ended his studies prematurely, desiring instead to travel the world. That is why he became a shepherd. On his way to see the merchant's daughter, Santiago visits Tarifa and meets an old woman who interprets dreams. He shares his recurring dream of finding treasure at the Egyptian pyramids. The woman agrees to interpret it if he gives her 1/10 of any treasure he finds. She tells him the dream means he must go to the pyramids to find his treasure. Disappointed by her straightforward answer, Santiago leaves, vowing never to believe in dreams again. At the market, Santiago meets an old man who critiques his book for showing characters unable to follow their personal legends. The man, Melchizedek, introduces himself as the king of Salem and offers to help Santiago find his treasure in exchange for 1/10 of his sheep. To prove his insight, Melchizedek writes details of Santiago's life in the sand, including his hometown and the merchant's daughter. His cape falls open, revealing a blinding light. He explains that a personal legend is one's true purpose, known in youth but often abandoned due to fear and doubt. The universe, he says, helps those who pursue their destiny as it nourishes the soul of the world. Melchizedek tells Santiago he appears to those about to give up on their dreams. Inspired but uncertain, Santiago begins to consider embarking on his journey. Santiago agrees to give Melchizedek 1/10 of his flock in exchange for guidance to find the hidden treasure. Although Santiago briefly considers buying a ticket to Africa, he decides against it. The next day, he meets Melchizedek again and learns that his friend has agreed to buy the rest of his sheep, which Melchizedek calls the principle of favorability, or beginner's luck, a force that encourages people to pursue their personal legends. Melchizedek tells Santiago the treasure is near the pyramids in Egypt and gives him 2 stones, Urim, yes, and Thummim, no, to help interpret omens. He advises Santiago to follow the omens and see his personal legend through to the end. Before parting, Melchizedek reflects on giving advice to Abraham and apologizes to God for his pride. Santiago crosses to Tangier, Morocco, where he is swindled out of his money by a man he meets in a bar. Despite this setback, he resolves to view himself as an adventurer rather than a victim, learning to face reality with a positive mindset. In need of money, Santiago works for a crystal merchant, who tells him that even a year's wages wouldn't cover the journey to Egypt. Though offered enough money to return home, Santiago chooses to stay and save for more sheep. After a month, Santiago suggests building a display case to attract more customers. Despite the merchant's hesitation, the idea succeeds, and within 2 months, Santiago earns enough to double his flock or trade in Tangier. Later, he proposes selling tea in crystal glasses, boosting sales further. Their success reminds the merchant of his unfulfilled dreams, and he introduces Santiago to Maktub, meaning, "it is written." Together, they prosper financially. After nearly a year in Tangier, Santiago has earned enough to buy 120 sheep, a ticket home, and an import license. The crystal merchant, now wealthy enough to visit Mecca, confesses he won't go, just as he believes Santiago won't return to shepherding. Realizing he can always return to Andalusia, but may not get another chance to follow his dream, Santiago decides to pursue his personal legend. Santiago meets an Englishman studying alchemy, who is searching for a renowned alchemist in Al-Fayoum. The Englishman notices Santiago's divination stones, Urim and Thummim, and explains their biblical origins. He shares his belief in omens and his quest to discover the universal language of the world. The two join a caravan crossing the Sahara. As Santiago nears his personal legend, he reflects on how his purpose becomes clearer. Observing the desert and the caravan, Santiago begins to understand the universal language through intuition and experience. He discards his book, choosing to learn directly from the journey. At night, the camel driver shares his story with Santiago. Once a farmer near Cairo, he lost everything to a flood, but learned not to fear the unknown, understanding that survival is always possible. The caravan speeds up, avoiding fires to minimize danger. The Englishman, unable to sleep, talks to Santiago about the soul of the world. He explains that deep desires connect a person to this universal force. Santiago tries to read the Englishman's alchemical books, but they are filled with complex theories. He learns that alchemy teaches that everything is part of a single essence, with the masterwork consisting of the elixir of life and the philosopher's stone. Despite the threat of raids, the camel driver remains calm, advising Santiago that true happiness lies in living in the present moment. The next morning, they arrive at a vast oasis. The Englishman is eager to meet the alchemist, while Santiago reflects that his treasure feels both closer and farther away. The alchemist observes the oasis, reflecting on how its greenery contrasts with the desert. He muses that perhaps God created the desert to help people appreciate date palms. Turning to practical matters, he interprets omens that an important man in the caravan is destined to learn the secrets of alchemy. The camel driver explains to Santiago that an oasis is neutral ground, populated mainly by women and children, and all travelers must surrender their weapons. Santiago and the Englishman search for the alchemist, asking locals who refer to him as a powerful figure but provide no clear answers. At a well, Santiago meets a young woman named Fatima and is overwhelmed by love, realizing it as a universal language understood by all. Prodded by the Englishman, he asks Fatima about the alchemist, and she points south. The Englishman departs to find him, but Santiago lingers, thinking about Fatima, convinced their love will guide him to all treasures. The next day, Santiago learns the Englishman met the alchemist, who advised him to try turning lead into gold himself. Fatima then arrives at the well, and Santiago confesses his love, asking her to be his wife. Fatima, surprised, drops her jug, spilling water. After a month at the oasis, the caravan leader announces they cannot proceed due to a tribal war. Santiago meets the Englishman, who is working on alchemy, and admits his past fear of failure in pursuing the masterwork. Seeking guidance, Santiago observes two hawks fighting and envisions an attack on the oasis. He shares his vision with the chieftains, who are skeptical but decide to arm the men. Santiago remains confident in his decision. Later, he encounters a horseman dressed in black with a falcon. The man, pressing a sword to Santiago's forehead, challenges him, but Santiago remains unafraid and explains he is following his personal legend. The horseman reveals himself as the alchemist and tells Santiago that courage is essential to understanding the language of the world. The next day, 500 disguised tribesmen attack the oasis. Forewarned, the chieftains ambush and kill all but their commander, who admits they sought food but violated sacred tradition and is executed. Santiago is rewarded with gold, but declines the offer to stay and be a counselor, choosing instead to continue his quest. That night, the alchemist advises Santiago to prepare for his journey and to remember that his treasure lies where his heart is. Santiago reflects and decides to press on. The following night, the alchemist and Santiago leave the oasis. Along the way, Santiago learns to find signs of life and experiences an omen in a cobra's hiding place. He also bids farewell to Fatima, whose love strengthens his resolve. As they travel, Santiago learns to trust his heart, overcoming fear and doubt. The alchemist teaches him that fear is a natural part of pursuing dreams, and that true courage comes from embracing it. Santiago grows more in tune with both himself and the world around him. Santiago and the alchemist are repeatedly stopped by tribesmen, but talk their way out until captured by an army. The alchemist claims Santiago can transform into the wind, and the tribal leader demands he prove it in 3 days or face death. Terrified, Santiago prays to the desert, wind, and sun for help. Finally connecting with the soul of God, he transforms into the wind, creating a powerful storm that amazes the tribesmen. The leader spares them and grants safe passage. At a monastery, the alchemist turns lead into gold, dividing it among himself, Santiago, and the monks. Before parting, he reminds Santiago of his journey's purpose. Santiago continues to the pyramids, where a scarab beetle guides him to dig. Thieves rob him and beat him when he finds nothing, but their mockery reveals the treasure's true location: a sycamore tree in a Spanish church. Returning to the church where his journey began, Santiago digs beneath the tree and discovers a chest of gold and jewels. Reflecting on his journey, he realizes life rewards those who pursue their dreams. Thank you. Subscribe for more content.